Today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video is going to be a bit different. I thought about making this video for a while now, and I think it's worth making a video on. Anyways, as you can see by the title of the video, I will be talking about both endings from Red Dead Redemption, which was a story focused on John Marston and his journey after the events of Red Dead Redemption 2. And finally, the ending of Red Dead Redemption 2, which was a story focused on Arthur Morgan's journey within the Dutch van der Linde gang. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, make sure to stay around on the remainder of this video, as we will be looking at both endings and discussing which ending was better. And of course, a lot of you guys will have an opinion, so make sure you stick around and watch the video. However, before I get started, if you guys could leave a like on this video, it will literally take 2 seconds of your time, and it will of course support the video. As always, if you find yourself new around to my channel, make sure to subscribe and click on the bell notification to receive all video uploads from me. I try to upload whenever I can, or when I have a cool topic idea to share with all of you guys. I would also recommend, if you haven't completed the main story of Red Dead Redemption 2 or even Red Dead Redemption, if you are thinking about going back and playing Red Dead Redemption, if you were a fan of Red Dead Redemption 2 and haven't played Red Dead Redemption and you don't want to be spoiled by the ending, then of course I do recommend that you guys don't continue on watching this video, because I will be discussing and talking about and even showcasing the endings in this video. So just a quick warning for you guys. It's been 5 months since the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, so I'm sure a lot of you watching the video right now have already completed the story, or at least Arthur's story. So let's start off by looking back at the original Red Dead Redemption story. For anyone who hasn't played Red Dead Redemption, basically it's set after the events of Red Dead Redemption 2. You play as a character, John Marston, and you hunt down your old friends from Dutch's gang. As you know, in Red Dead Redemption 2, you relive all of the moments and take part in all of the events which were hinted in Red Dead Redemption by John Marston. I hope I'm not confusing you guys at this point, but I do apologise if I am. So to simplify, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel to the story of Red Dead Redemption, and that's why we see all of the characters from Red Dead Redemption back in the world of Red Dead Redemption 2, because Red Dead Redemption 2 is set prior to Red Dead Redemption. So getting a bit off topic here. So leading up to the ending of Red Dead Redemption, John Marston is working under the government to hunt down all of his old gang members, and basically, he has to kill them. At this point, John's wife Abigail and son Jack Marston have both been captured by the government. So in order for John to see them again, he must follow the orders. A while later into the story, John finally hunts down the last man remaining, known as Dutch van der Linde. In the end, John doesn't even kill him or put a bullet in him, even though John is aiming the gun at Dutch. And Dutch is cornered on the side of a mountain with nowhere to run at all. In the end, Dutch takes his own life by jumping off the side of the cliff. When John finally reunites with his wife and son, it wasn't long until the government arrived on John Marston's land. Not to mention also, if you do remember, after the scene when Dutch throws himself off the cliff, John then goes down to the bottom of the mountain where he finds Dutch's body, and then of course Edgar Ross shows up and puts a bullet in Dutch's head and shames John Marston as a coward for not killing his former ex-gang member. So it is a really interesting story all the same, but let's continue. And yes, then of course, you guys guessed it, the saddest ending in gaming history potentially, or should I say in an open world game, has unfolded. John Marston dies to the hands of the government on a final standoff. A brave man, and such an awful way to die. So you guys know, when John Marston fights off some of the government on his land, John and Abigail and also Jack Marston fled over to one of the barns, and then of course John sets Abigail and Jack off on a horse, and basically John is left for dead to stand off against the government. So when John finally opens up the barn doors, there is an army of government members standing there waiting to put a bullet in John Marston. And as we know, John is a true hardcore hero, tries to fight off whoever was left there, and unfortunately John dies to the hands of the government. In quick summary of Red Dead Redemption story, John was taken by the government and he was forced to go hunt down the remaining gang members of Dutch's gang, and he pretty much takes out the rest of the gang members, which of course leaves Dutch van der Linde left alive. And then of course at the end of the game we see Dutch throw himself off the cliff. In return for this, John would get his freedom, and of course he would also get back his wife Abigail and his son Jack Marston. We all saw at the end of Red Dead Redemption the government finally came for John Marston, since he was the last member of Dutch's gang and he was the last guy alive. So of course it kind of made sense that the government came for John, since he was part of the gang. It was a great chain of events, but a very sad ending of course for Mr. John Marston. A nice trip down memory lane and looking back on one of the most loved characters of all time. Which now brings us on to Rockstar's latest installment, Red Dead Redemption 2. As mentioned before, if you haven't completed the story yet, then it's really not worth your time watching any more of this video. The new hero in the Red Dead Redemption series, known as Arthur Morgan, who is the main character we play as and take part in an awesome experience throughout the world of Red Dead Redemption 2. The story follows Arthur's life within the Dutch van der Linde gang and how he changed as a person within the gang. Along the way, Arthur makes new friends and lifelong friends. One example I can give you guys is Miss Sadie Adler. Arthur wasn't exactly the smartest gang member. He grew up with the gang and considered everyone in the gang his family. He also sees the gang leader Dutch van der Linde as a father. The reason for this is because, well, Dutch actually taught Arthur how to read and write. The same could be said for John Marston, as we know in Red Dead Redemption 2 we actually find out that John Marston was also taught by Dutch as well. So pretty much Dutch van der Linde was the father of the group, so it's very interesting. Anything Dutch plans out, Arthur follows without asking any questions, until later on in the game when Arthur starts to see everything more clearly for himself. He doesn't agree with most of Dutch's ideas or plans, then the gang starts to fall apart and everyone is slowly starting to lose belief in Dutch. It's now at this particular point in the game when Arthur finds out he's basically dying of an illness. For me personally, I found this sad because it was starting to look really good for Arthur and how he wanted to live by his own rules, and how we saw how wrong and how corrupted Dutch is. Not to mention as well, Arthur and John had a bit of a love-hate relationship, but it was Arthur who helped John escape from the law and away from Dutch before they could get to him. Before I continue on, I know there is multiple endings for Arthur's story depending on what direction and choices you make on the journey. My story ended when Arthur was crawling over to a rock and then he laid up against a rock looking at the sunset while seeing a deer in an open field as a sign of peace and rest. So if you guys actually got the good ending, well, you see that Arthur actually crawls up alongside the side of the mountain alongside a rock, and he sits there and he starts to see some flashbacks of some deer, and of course this kind of reflects on peace and, you know, how Arthur wanted a good life, and that's pretty much what it represents in this case. Overall, it's difficult to choose which ending was better and which journey was more spectacular. After giving it some thought, I think for me personally, it has to be Arthur's ending and story. As much as I loved Red Dead Redemption's ending, I think Red Dead Redemption 2 had more to offer, and it also had much more of an emotional impact as well. The cool thing about Arthur's journey is that we started off as an outlaw, and pretty much throughout the entire game we were an outlaw until Arthur decided, well, hey, maybe what we're doing here is wrong, and you start to see that towards the end of Red Dead Redemption 2's story. And of course, because Dutch is basically going insane, Arthur starts to question all of the actions Dutch makes, and it is very important to take notice of that, is because, well, Arthur is trying to do something really decent. He really does start to see the world in a different perspective, and I think that's really awesome, and I really love that about Red Dead Redemption 2's story, how Arthur started off as a guy who was tagging along with Dutch and believed in everything Dutch said, and then Arthur starts to slowly realise Dutch is really going in the wrong direction. And it's great to see that Arthur finally made a decision for himself, and he wanted out of the gang basically. He wanted to live his own life. And then of course Dutch kind of saw how Arthur reacted. The relationship between Dutch and Arthur starts to really fall through. Basically from there, Arthur just decided, well, he wants to be his own man and he wants to live his own life. He wants out of the gang. And I found that really cool. So it was really nice to see in the end Arthur really did care for those who he really loved, and he helped those in need and got rid of the people he did not like. So guys, with that said, I want to know what you guys got to say down in the comment section, because I personally find both endings of both Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 endings, I find them really good. They are, you know, they are sad in their different ways. I mean, they are unique in different ways as well, but I mean, for me personally, I prefer Arthur's story and ending as well, and just the entire story. So guys, with that said, I do thank you for watching this video, and if you did enjoy, make sure you do leave a comment down below and let me know on which story did you guys prefer the most. With that said, make sure you do subscribe to the channel for more awesome Red Dead Redemption 2 videos, as I will try my best to upload whenever I have something cool to talk about. With that said everyone, have an awesome day.